Welcome to English Grammar 2, Unit 55. Verbs followed by infinitive, but here we have object before the infinitive. So we have verb plus object plus to plus the base form. In the previous unit, we have already studied verbs followed by to plus the base form directly. But here we start with verbs followed by object, then comes to plus the base form. For example, I want you to come, etc. Let's start with part A. Here we have a table of verbs followed by to plus the base form, or sometimes followed by object, then to plus the base form. For example, the verbs want, ask, help, would like, expect, beg, mean, which means intend, and would prefer. These verbs are followed by to plus infinitive, or what is called to plus the base form. The structure can be like this: verb followed by to plus the base form, or verbs followed by object plus to plus the base form. Let's start with the first case, where we speak about verbs followed by to plus the base form directly. Then we will see the other form, verbs followed by object plus to. For example, here is a comparison. We expected to be late. Here we have the verb expected followed by to, be, to plus the base form be, and here we think who's to be late? We. On the other side, we have we expected Dan to be late. We expected Dan to be late. Who's to be late? Dan. And here we have the object Dan, then comes to plus be plus the base form. So the verb is expected followed by object, the object Dan, then comes to plus the base form. The second example: would you like to go now? This is a question. Would you like to go? Here we have would like plus to plus the base form go. The other example: would you like me to go now? In the first example, would you like to go now? We don't know who's supposed to go, you for example, but here, would you like me to go now? Who's supposed to go? Me. And here we have the object me, then came to plus the base form to go. The third example here: he doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to know. Here we have the verb want is followed by to plus the base form directly. And on the other side, he doesn't want anybody to know. Who's supposed to know? Anybody, not he himself. In the first example, he doesn't want to know means who doesn't want to know? The subject he. But here in the second example, he doesn't want anybody to know. Who's supposed to know? Anybody. So we have here object, then to plus base form. Don't say want that. Okay? After the verb want, we don't use that clause. We don't use that clause. Do you want me to come with you? Here we have the verb want followed by the object, then came to plus the base form. To come. But we don't say, do you want that I come? We don't use that clause after want, after the verb want. After the verb want, we are not allowed to use that clause, that plus subject plus verb. After the verb help, we can use either infinitive with or without to. We can use infinitive with to, or we can use infinitive without to. In other words, we can use the base form only. Can you help me to move this table? Here we have, after the verb help, we have the object me, then comes to plus the base form to move this table. Or can you help me move this table? Here is another way. We can use the verb help followed by object me and followed by the base form without to. Move. Here we have move, the base form without to. So after the verb help, we can use object, and after the object we can use to plus the base form, or we can use the base form only without to. We have two choices. Part B. In part B, we have a table of other verbs like tell, remind, force, encourage, teach, enable, order, warn, invite, persuade, and get. Get here means persuade or arrange for. These verbs have the structure form verb plus object plus to plus the base form. Means still they are followed by object, and after the object comes to plus the base form, or what is called infinitive. For example, can you remind me to phone Sam tomorrow? And here is a question, and we have the verb remind followed by me as an object, then came to plus the base form infinitive. Who taught you to drive? Another question. The verb taught is followed by you is the object, and the object is followed by to plus the base form to drive. The third example, I didn't move the piano by myself. I got somebody to help me. Here we have the verb got followed by the object somebody followed by to plus the base form to help me. The next example, Jim said the switch was dangerous and warned me not to touch it. And warned, the verb warned, followed by me, the object, and to touch is the infinitive, and it is here, and here it is negative, the infinitive is negative, so we use not before to, so it becomes not to touch. So we have the verb warned followed by object me followed by negative infinitive not to touch it. In the next example, the verb is passive. When the verb is passive, then we use infinitive directly after the verb and the object moves forward. You know how to form the passive. Forming the passive can be done by moving the object, bringing the object in the beginning of the sentence in the position of the subject. In the position of the subject. When you take out the object and put it at the beginning of the sentence, then what comes close to the verb? We have the infinitive. The infinitive comes directly after the verb. So we have the verb followed by infinitive directly without object. The object becomes at the beginning of the sentence as the subject. In this example, I was warned not to touch the switch. If we look to the last example, Jim said the switch was dangerous and warned me not to touch it. we have the object me here, and the object is moved forward at the beginning of the sentence. It becomes I, and since the verb is in the past, so the passive form of the past becomes was plus past participle went, so it becomes I was went. And when we move me from its place, then comes not to touch. So the sentence became this way: I was warned not to touch the switch. So in case of active sentences, we have the verb warned followed by object me, then the infinitive not to touch, the negative infinitive not to touch. But if we change this form into passive, then we move the object from the back and put it forward. So we have the verb warned followed by infinitive directly, by negative infinitive directly. It becomes I was warned not to touch the switch. Another rule here: you cannot use suggest with the structure verb plus object plus to plus the base form. So after the verb suggested or suggest, we can't use object and to plus the base form, because the verb suggest is followed by verb plus ing. We can't use to plus the base form after the verb suggest. Even though we use object, still we cannot use to plus the base form. That's why we can't use this form. So we use suggest followed by that clause. We use the verb suggest followed by that clause, but not to plus the base form. It cannot be followed by to plus the base form. It can be followed by verb plus ing, or in other words, in other way, you can use that clause after the verb suggest. So we have two choices after suggest. Either we use verb plus ing, or we can use that clause, that plus subject plus verb plus complement. But we cannot use to plus the base form after the verb suggest. So here we have example. Jane suggested that I should ask your advice. Here we have that clause after the verb suggest, that I should ask your advice. Complete that clause after the verb suggest. So we cannot say Jane suggested me to ask. Don't say Jane suggested me to ask, because to ask is infinitive and suggest is the verb suggested is not followed by infinitive. It can be followed by verb plus ing. So we can say Jane suggested asking. Part C. After the verbs advise, recommend, and allow, two structures are possible. We can use two structures. For example, we have the first structure, the verb advise, recommend, and allow, followed by verb plus ing without object. If we use these verbs, advise, recommend, and allow without object, we use verb plus ing. And if we use these verbs followed by object, then we use to plus the base form after the object. On the left hand, we have here, I would advise or recommend staying in the hotel. Here we have the verb advise or recommend followed by verb plus ing, staying. There is no object. So we use here verb plus ing. But on the other hand, if we use object, then we use to plus the base form. Here is the example. I wouldn't advise or recommend anybody to stay in that hotel. Here we have the object anybody. We have the object anybody. So we use to plus the base form after the object. So these three verbs, if they are written without object, we use verb plus ing. If they are written with objects, we use to plus the base form. Another example, they don't allow parking in front of the building. Here the verb allows followed by verb plus ing, and we don't have here object. On the other hand, they don't allow people to park in front of the building, and here the verb allow is followed by object, and after the object we use to plus the base form. So these three verbs, when they are not followed by object, we use verb plus ing. And when they are followed by object, we use to plus the base form. Study these examples with be allowed in the passive. Okay, now look here and concentrate. When these verbs, or exactly the verb allowed, is used in the passive form, then we have different structure. Okay, here they don't allow parking in front of the building. So parking is used as an object when we make it in the passive. So we bring parking at the beginning of the sentence. So we bring it at the beginning of the sentence. So parking becomes, and the sentence don't allow present simple. So we use isn't allowed, becomes isn't allowed in the passive in front of the building. This is the passive form of the previous example. The example, they don't allow parking in front of the building. When we make it passive, we bring the word parking at the beginning of the sentence, and we change the verb don't allow from active verb to passive verb. It becomes isn't allowed because it is in the present simple, and we use is. Parking is singular, we use is, and don't is negative, so we use is in the negative form. Then we use allow in the past participle, so it becomes parking isn't allowed in front of the building. If you go to the right hand and see the same example, they don't allow people to park in front of the building. So people can be brought forward, and it becomes people or you aren't allowed, and to park remains at the same, and it is put directly after the verb allowed, because we took out people, the object, and brought it forward at the beginning of the sentence. Here the example written by you, and here you means people, so it becomes people aren't allowed to park in front of the building, and to park remained after the verb allowed directly, because we have moved the object people forward to the beginning of the sentence, and here it is written you, and it must be people. Part D, make and let. Here in part D, we are going to speak about verbs followed by the base form without to. Verb followed by the base form or infinitive without to. These verbs have the structure verb plus object plus infinitive without to, and mainly we have an object after these verbs, then comes infinitive without to, or what we call the base form. From these verbs we have let, hear, feel, see, make. Let, hear, feel, see, make. First example, I made him promise that he wouldn't tell anybody what happened. And here the verb is made, it is the past of make, and whatever is the tense of the verb, it must be followed by the base form. We don't say the verb is in the past, then we put the verb which comes after it in the past. No. The verb is in the past, in the present, in the past perfect, present perfect, or any tense. It doesn't matter. We must use base form after it. The bare verb. Verb without any addition. And without to also. So we say I made him, and here we have the object him after made, followed by the verb promise in the base form. The next example, hot weather makes me feel tired. Hot weather makes, here we have the verb makes, present simple, and followed by the object me, and feel is the verb in the base form. Feel is the verb in the base form after the object, and it is in the base form. It is infinitive without to after the verb makes, and it doesn't matter whether the tense of the verb makes is in the present or in the past. What comes after the object here is a verb in the base form, infinitive without to. Third example, her parents wouldn't let her go out alone. Her parents wouldn't let her go out alone. Here we have the verb let and followed by her object, and the object is followed by the base form, infinitive without to, go. The verb go. The next example, let me carry out bag for you. Here we have let, the verb let, followed by the object me, and followed by the base form of the verb carry without to, infinitive without to, the base form. We say make somebody do, not to do. But in the passive form, the verb make or made, when it is written in the passive form, we don't use base form after it, but we use to plus the base form. We use infinitive with to. Mind one thing. In this group of verbs, which are followed by object and base form without to, infinitive without to, when they are active sentences, we use after the object we use base form or infinitive without to. But if the sentence is changed into passive and the main verb is changed into passive form, then we use after the verb, we use infinitive with to. We must use to when the verb is in the passive form. For example, the verb make. Here we see the last example. We were made to wait for 2 hours. If we say the original sentence, they made us wait. They made us wait. And here after us, we use base form, and this is active sentence. We use base form without to. And to make it passive, we take us and bring it at the beginning of the sentence. It becomes we. And the verb made in the active sentence. It changed in the passive into were plus made, the past participle, so it becomes we were made. And wait in the base form, it changed into infinitive form with to, so it becomes we were made to wait for 2 hours. That is all. Thank you.